Welcome back to Letting Go. We're doing chapter 6, which is fear, and this is part 2. I left off at the section Owning the Shadow. So let's get to it. One of the blocks to emotional development is the fear of what lies buried in our unconscious. Carl Jung called this area, which we are unwilling to look at, and to own the shadow. He said that the self cannot become healed and whole unless we look at and acknowledge the shadow. This means that buried within us all, in what Jung called the collective unconscious, is everything that we most dislike admitting about ourselves. The average human, he said, would much rather project his shadow onto the world and condemn it and see it as evil, thinking that his problem is to battle with evil in the world. In actuality, the problem is merely to acknowledge the presence of such thoughts and impulses in ourselves. By acknowledging them, and they become quiet. Once they are quiet, they no longer unconsciously run us. In looking at our fears of the unknown, which are really fears of what is in the depths of the unconscious, it is useful to have a sense of humor. Once looked at and acknowledged, the shadow no longer has any power. In fact, it is only our fear of these thoughts and impulses that give them any power. Once we become acquainted with our shadow, we no longer have to project our fears upon the world, and they begin to evaporate rapidly. What makes the endless television programs, which are concerned with mayhem and its various forms, so attractive? It is because what is being acted out on the screen, where it is safe, are all the forbidden unconscious fantasies in our own psyche. Once we are willing to look at the same movies on the TV screen of our own minds and see whence they really originate, the attraction of such entertainment disappears. People who have acknowledged the content of their own shadow have no interest in crime, violence, or fearful disasters. One of the blocks to becoming acquainted with the fears in one's own mind is the fear of the opinions of others. The wanting of their approval goes on inside of our minds in a constant fantasy. We identify with the opinions of others, including authority figures, and coalesce this in such a way that we hear it as our own opinion of ourselves. In looking at fears, then, it is well to remember that Carl Jung saw this reservoir of the forbidden inside the shadow as a part of the collective unconsciousness. The term collective unconsciousness means that everybody has these thoughts and fantasies. There is nothing unique about any of us when it comes to the way we symbolize our emotions. Everybody secretly harbors the fear that they are dumb, ugly, unlovable, and a failure. The unconscious mind is not polite. It thinks in gross concepts. When it thinks of the phrase, murder the bum, the unconscious literally means that. Look deep within yourself the next time somebody cuts you off in traffic, and picture what you would really do to that person if you were strictly honest with yourself and did not censor the image coming to mind. You'd like to run them off the road, wouldn't you? Pulverize them. Push them off the cliff. Isn't that right? That's the way the unconscious thinks. The reason that a sense of humor is useful is because these images are comical once we look at them. There is nothing awful about it. It is just the way the unconscious handles images. It doesn't mean that you are a rotten person or that you are potentially a criminal. It just means that you have gotten honest and faced how the human animal mind operates in this dimension. There is no point in getting melodramatic, self critical, or tragic about it. The unconscious is crude and uncivilized. While your intellect went to prep school, your unconscious remained in the jungle where it is still swinging in the trees. Looking at the shadow side is not a time to get prissy or squeamish. It is not a time to take it literally either, because the symbols of the unconscious are just that. They are symbols, and they are primitive in nature. If worked with consciously, they can empower us rather than inhibit us. It takes a lot of energy to keep the shadow buried and to suppress our multitude of fears. The result is energy depletion. On the emotional level, it is expressed as inhibition of the capacity to love. In the world of consciousness, like goes to like, so that fear attracts fear, just as its corollary is true love. Sorry. Um, in the world of consciousness, like goes to like, so that fear attracts fear, just as it is corollary is true that love attracts love. The more fear we hold, the more fearful situations we attract to our life. Each fear requires additional energy to create a protective device until finally all of our energy is drained into our extensive defensive measures, the willingness to look at a fear and work with it until we are free of it brings about immediate rewards. Each of us has within us a certain reservoir of suppressed and repressed fear. This quantity of fear spills into all areas of our life, colors all of our experience, decreases our joy in life, and reflects itself in the musculature of the face so as to affect our physical appearance, our physical strength, and the condition of health in all the organs in the body. Sustained and chronic fear gradually suppresses the body's immune system with kinesiologic testing. We can instantly demonstrate that a fearful thought causes a major reduction in muscle power and deranges the energy flow down the body's energy meridians to the body's vital organs. Although we know that it is totally damaging to our relationships, health, and happiness, we still hang on to fear. Why is that? We have the conscious fantasy that fear is keeping us alive. This is because fear is associated with our whole set of survival mechanisms. We have the idea that if we were to let go of fear, our main defense mechanism, we would become vulnerable in some way. In reality, the truth is just the opposite. Fear is what blinds us to the real dangers of life. In fact, fear itself is the greatest danger that the human body faces. It is fear and guilt that bring about disease and failure in every area of our lives. We could take the same protective actions out of love rather than out of fear. We cannot care for our bodies because we appreciate and value them rather than, can we not care for our bodies because we appreciate and value them rather than out of fear of disease and dying? Can we not be of service to others in our life out of love rather than out of fear of losing them? Can we not be polite and courteous to strangers because we care for our fellow human beings rather than because we fear losing their good opinion of us? Can we not do a good job because we care about the quality of our performance and we care about our fellow workers? Can we not perform our job well because we care about the recipients of our services? Rather than just fear of losing our jobs or pursuing our own ambition, can we not accomplish more by cooperation rather than by fearful competition? Can we not drive carefully because we have a high regard for ourselves and care for our welfare and those who love us, rather than because we fear an accident? On a spiritual level, isn't it more effective if, out of compassion and identification with our fellow human beings, we care for them, rather than trying to love them out of fear of God's punishment if we don't? Guilt. One particular form of fear is what we call guilt. Guilt is always associated with a feeling of wrongness and potential punishment. Either real or in fantasy, if punishment is not forthcoming in the external world, it expresses itself as self-punishment on an emotional level. Guilt accompanies all of the negative emotions, and thus, where there is fear, there is guilt. If you think a guilty thought and have someone test your muscle strength, you will see that the muscle instantly goes weak. Your cerebral hemisphere has become desynchronized, and all of your energy meridians are thrown out of balance. Nature, therefore, says that guilt is destructive. If guilt is so destructive, then why are there such paeans of praise allotted to it? I don't know what that word. It's Paeans. Why do so-called experts view guilt as beneficial? For example, a psychiatrist wrote a magazine article in praise of guilt, declaring guilt is good for you. He then qualified the statement with appropriate guilt. Let's look at what guilt is really all about and see if we agree or not. When you cross the street, you look both ways to see if a car is coming. How did this come about? When you were a child, you were told that it was bad to cross the street. Thus, we see that guilt is really a substitute for a sense of reality in a mind that is undeveloped, such as that of a child. It is a learned behavior which is purportedly pragmatic, to prevent further error or the repetition of a mistake. 99% of guilt has nothing whatsoever to do with reality. In fact, the most pious, meek, and harmless individuals are often riddled with guilt. Guilt is really self-condemnation and self-invalidation of our worth and value as a human being. Guilt is as prevalent as fear, and we feel guilty no matter what we are doing. A part of our mind says that we really ought to be doing something else, or whatever we are actually doing at the moment, we ought to be doing better. We should be getting a better golf score. We should be reading a book instead of watching television. We should make love better, cook better, run faster, grow taller, be stronger, be smarter, be more educated. In between the fear of living and the fear of dying is the guilt of the moment. We seek to escape it by remaining unaware of it through suppression, repression, projecting it onto others, and escapism. Remaining unconscious of guilt, repression, however, does not solve it. The guilt reemerges in the form of self-punishment and through accidents, misfortune, loss of jobs and relationships, physical disease and sickness, tiredness, exhaustion, and the multiple ways the ingenious mind figures out how to bring about the loss of pleasure, joy, and aliveness. Guilt represents death just as love represents life. Guilt is part of the smaller self and underlies our willingness to believe negative things about ourselves. The happiness and joy of the day is instantly destroyed by one negative remark from a family member, friend, or neighbor. Physical disease is unlikely to exist without guilt. And guilt is a denial of our inner intrinsic innocence? Why do we buy into so much garbage? It's not because of our Is it not because of our very innocence? Is it not because we grew up, we trusted that what others were telling us was the truth? And even currently, do we still trust what others are telling us is the truth? Is it not so that we have bought into 10,000 lies and we are willing to buy another 10,000 out of naivete of our inner innocence? Is not that inner innocence the very reason for our exploitability? In fact, when we look deep within ourselves, is it not because of our very innocence that we believe ourselves to be guilty? It is because of our own inner innocence that we have bought into all the negativity of the world and allowed it to kill our aliveness, destroy our awareness of who we really are, and sell us the pathetic smallness for which we have settled. Is not ours the innocence of the newborn that cannot defend itself and with no capacity for discernment could only allow itself to be programmed like a computer? To see this means to become conscious. We hear of consciousness raising programs and weekend seminars to expand our consciousness. What does this mean? To get some new complicated formulas? To get programmed with somebody else's idea of mystical truth? Most of the consciousness programs boil down to this essential point. Become aware of what we are buying into, what we are accepting daily. Let's look at what we have already been programmed with and begin to question it, disassemble it, and let it go. Let's wake up and free ourselves from being exploited and enslaved by the negative programming of the world. We will see it for what it is, which is an attempt by others to control us, exploit us, extract our money, our services, our energy, our loyalties, and capture our mind. The mechanisms whereby this comes about were so beautifully exemplified in the movie Tron, in which the very function of master control is to enslave by progressive programming. When we see the truth of how programming happens, we will see that we are the pure blank computer. We are the innocent space in which the programming is occurring. When we look at all of this, we are going to get angry. Anger is better than resignation, apathy, depression, and grief. It means to take charge of our mind instead of handing it to the television set, the newspaper, the magazines, the neighbors, the conversations in the subway, the chance remarks of the waitress, the garbage in and the garbage out. What went into our memory banks was garbage, and when we see this, we will have much less fear. We will enjoy starting to let the feelings come up, seeing them for what they are, clearing out all of the garbage, and letting it all go. Once we have looked deep within ourselves and found that innate inner innocence, we will stop hating ourselves. We will stop condemning ourselves and stop buying into the condemnation of others and their subtle attempts to invalidate our worth as human beings. It is time to re-own our own power and stop giving it away to every passing scammer who jiggles our fears and shakes loose some money out of our pocketbook or enslaves us to their cause. Living off of our energy is easy to get away. It's easy to get away from all the fear because we have the power of choice now. We fear that the inner voyage of discovery will lead us to some dreadful, awful truth. In its programming of our minds, this is one of the barriers that the world has set up to prevent us from finding out the real truth. There is one thing the world does not want us to find out, and that is the truth about ourselves. Why? Because then we will become free. We can no longer be controlled, manipulated, exploited, drained, enslaved, imprisoned, vilified, or disempowered. Therefore, the inner voyage of discovery is cloaked over with an aura of mystery and foreboding. What is the real truth about this voyage? The real truth is that as we go within and discard one illusion after another, one falsehood after another, one negative program after another, it gets lighter and lighter. The awareness of the presence of love becomes stronger and stronger. We will feel lighter and lighter. Life becomes progressively more effortless. Every great teacher since the beginning of time has said to look within and find the truth, for the truth of what we really are will set us free. If what is to be found within ourselves were really something to feel guilty about, something that is rotten, evil, and negative, then all the world's great teachers would not advise us to look there. On the contrary, they would tell us to avoid it at all costs. We will discover that all of the things the world calls evil are right on the surface, they are right on the top, as the superficial, outer thin layer. Beneath these errors is mistakenness. We are not rotten, only ignorant. As the quantity of guilty fear, and the energy of accompanying it are relinquished, we will notice that physical diseases and symptoms begin to disappear. The capacity to love ourselves in the form of increased self-esteem returns, and with it comes the capacity to love others. Being freed from guilt brings about a renewal of life energy. This can be dramatically witnessed in many people who are converted through religious experience. The sudden freedom from guilt through the mechanism of forgiveness is responsible for thousands of recoveries from serious and advanced diseases. Whether or not we agree with their religious concept is immaterial. What is important to notice is that the alleviation of guilt is accompanied by a resurgence of life energy, well-being, and physical health. When it comes to healing ourselves and increasing our own emotional health, it pays to be paranoid. We become aware of all the guilt mongers in our life and their deleterious influences. We can ask ourselves, could we not achieve the same motivation or behavior out of love rather than out of fear and guilt? Is guilt the only reason we don't stab our neighbor? Why couldn't it be that we would refuse to stab our neighbor because we love and care for him as a fellow human being who is intrinsically innocent and who is struggling to grow, but may make mistakes along the way, just as we ourselves have done? Would not following religious teachings, whatever they are, be more effective if done out of love and appreciation rather than out of guilt and fear? We can ask ourselves, what do we really need guilt for anyway? What possible service do we get out of it? Are we so miserably stupid that we behave only out of guilt? Are we so unconscious? Cannot consideration for the feelings of others replace guilt as a motivation for appropriate human behavior? As we examine these issues and look at their social origins, we see that the Middle Ages are far from over. The Inquisition has merely taken on newer and subtler forms of cruelty. We have unwittingly bought into a system of negativity that is currently running the planet. To make wrong and to make guilty is really a form of cruelty, is it not? We have allowed others to program us with methods of self-torture, and we can see that we have retaliated by inviting others to torture themselves in return. We've allowed ourselves to be manipulated by guilt, and we turn it around and use that same mechanism of guilt to try and exploit and control others. The degree to which we have not allowed ourselves to experience the reality of our true self is represented by our resentment toward those who have actually done so. We resent their aliveness in the areas in which we feel disabled. This sobering truth is represented by the story of a man who walks along the beach and comes upon a fisherman with a pail full of crabs. He says to the fisherman, "You better put a cover on that pail or the crabs will get out." "Well, no," said the wise old fisherman. "There is no need for that, you see. As one crab crawls up the side of the pail to get out, the other crabs reach up and grab him and pull him back down. So there's no need for a cover. As we keep letting go, getting lighter, and becoming freer, we will unfortunately see that the nature of the world is like that pail of crabs. And then the full extent of its negativity becomes apparent. When we become totally aware of the bill of goods that we have been sold, it is very likely that we will feel anger and a strong desire to become liberated by the constraints of negativity. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I think there's a lot of stuff in there about grief. A lot of good questions in there. Like, I think my main takeaway is like giving myself grace, because like when it was talking about as a young human, when you first come on earth and you first start hearing, really just experiencing anything, like, and even now, a lot of times, like, I 100% assumed what people were telling me was gospel, right? Like, I just assumed everybody could be trusted, and I still do that to some degree. I definitely, I'm more wise about it now, but even still, and I think that part, when I was reading that was like really speaking to me, like it's true that innocent part of myself certainly bought into many societal lies just because somebody told me and I trusted them. Not that they were trying to hurt me intentionally, but they were hurt in the same way. So I think that it's a useful perspective to realize that I came into this world innocent, and of course I'm going to fall prey to these things. I should give myself a little grace that I didn't get it all figured out immediately, and I have lots of room to grow because I bought a lot of lies, but I don't have to be angry at myself for making those mistakes because I'm trying my best, I guess. And I think we probably could all give ourselves a little more grace in that way, so as not to hate ourselves. So I don't hate myself for just being addicted to like masturbation or drugs, or being addicted to anything like the actual, like, yeah, just like not hating myself because of it, because I'm still struggling with some of those things. Like, there's no need to hate myself for it. I need to be compassionate and I need to work on it, but there's no need to self-deprecate. It's not useful. I need to be on my team, I think. And I want you to be on your team as well. But tomorrow, we're reading chapter 7, Desire. We're finally getting into more positive emotions, which is good. Yeah.